Welcome everyone to our Wednesday edition of our Packers News live chat alongside Jim Owczarski. I am Olivia Reiner. We are less than 30 hours away from the 49ers. We'll get you up to speed on COVID-19 and how it's impacting both rosters. Plus, we'll also take a look at a slightly dilapidated 49ers roster in just a moment. However, before we begin, if you are over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us a question, leave us a comment down in the chat. Jim and I will get to some of those toward the end of our conversation today. Just like the Packers, COVID-19 has stricken the San Francisco 49ers. Wide receiver Kendrick Bourne has been diagnosed with COVID-19, and the team is currently working with the league to assess if there's any high-risk close contacts to Bourne. Those players, if they decide that there are any, would not be able to play on Thursday night. As of right now, the game is on as scheduled. How could that change over the next 24 hours?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Olivia, I think if it changes, it's going to have to be because there's an outbreak or such a big swath of high contacts or additional positive tests coming out of San Francisco. Now, let's be real. If they were kind of conducting business as usual, there's only a handful of healthy wide receivers. Kendrick Bourne was one of them. If they were in a meeting room or together on the field for any length of time, would the league allow the 49ers to play with no wide receivers and just say make do with like the two running backs we have healthy? So I don't know. I think the league has clearly decided they're playing this game Thursday, and the only way that doesn't happen, I guess, is if there's just some sort of spread that in their mind they just can't allow the 49ers to play.
Let's take a look at what is on the Packers' plate tomorrow night in San Francisco. We'll play a quick, fun game here first. Chat, you can participate. What do all of these players have in common? Let's see. Every single one of these players touched the ball on the 49ers 2019 NFC Championship game. However, between injury, COVID-19, just simply not being on the team anymore, none of these players will play in the game tomorrow night. How capable is head coach Kyle Shanahan of bringing together a team to attack the Packers?
Oh, he's very capable. And Packers fans, and speaking offensively, Mike Pettin knows that he can do that. And you just look no further back than 2018 when C.J. Beathard led the 49ers to a lead late on a Monday night game at Lambeau Field. Packers won with a walk-off Mason Crosby field goal, which was set up by a Kevin King interception. That was just 2 years ago. The 49ers were dealing with the same kind of thing where almost everyone was hurt. Garoppolo was hurt. Their starting running back was hurt. Their starting receivers were all hurt. And at the time, Olivia, someone named Raheem Mostert had 87 yards rushing in that game in 2018. To that point, Mostert was a journeyman, been cut by a handful of teams, and obviously Packers fans know what he did to them, not just in 18, but last year. So, yes, I think the Packers, this is one of those deals where Kyle Shanahan, Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator, they've already shown that they can make a game very competitive and win a game, honestly, regardless of who they roll out there.
Perhaps the most thin position along the 49ers roster is at running back, with Raheem Mostert, Tevin Coleman, and Jeff Wilson all out tomorrow night. That means that JaMycal Hasty and Jerick McKinnon will step up and be the main running backs for the 49ers. Through 8 games, McKinnon specifically has 47 carries for 209 yards and 4 touchdowns. How effectively can the 49ers run the ball without their top backs?
Yeah, I think, as long as they feel their offensive line is healthy enough, they're going to be able to run the ball. I mean, this isn't to denigrate the talent on the 49ers, the guys who are missing their starters for a reason. But along the same lines of I can see why the Packers would let Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams walk in free agency, Olivia, running backs are fairly replaceable. We started this with Raheem Mostert. He was an undrafted guy who was cut by a bunch of teams, and then a whole bunch of guys had to get hurt in San Francisco for him to even get a shot. And then look what happened. So I'm not going to – and Jerick McKinnon was supposed to be the man for Kyle Shanahan in this offense. And a couple of knee injuries, I mean, the fact that he's even playing is a good story. But I don't know. I mean, by Friday morning, I'm already forgetting the kid's name that you just mentioned outside of McKinnon. He could be a household name because not just because it's Shanahan and their run scheme, Olivia, but because, frankly, the Packers have done nothing to prove that they can stop the run if the other team is committed to it.
The Packers defense should be able to stop a makeshift 49ers offense. They're the fourth highest paid defense in the league, for crying out loud. However, the Packers defense has struggled primarily against stopping the run. Just last weekend, Vikings running back Dalvin Cook hung up 196 rushing yards on the ground, plus he scored 3 rushing touchdowns. The defense missed 11 tackles all day. How likely is it that the defense can correct their mistakes that they made last weekend going into Thursday?
I don't think they can correct mistakes. They didn't practice this week. You're not going to get better at tackling I guess that what they're hoping is that there were a lot of mental errors in terms of gap assignments, maybe some technical type stuff that they can clean up. But in reality, it is what it is. I think if the 49ers run the ball 40 times, the Packers are going to miss tackles. And the 49ers are going to roll up some yards. It's just the way Thursday nights are set up. I don't know how you can fix any of that. I think if it's better, Olivia, it's not because they fixed it. It's better because, to your point, the Packers should be a better team. Defensively, yeah, Kevin King's out. He's been out. Vernon Scott, role players out. Will Redmond now, that's a quasi-starter, but you swap him with Raven Green coming back. Kamal Martin's out. He's only played 2 games. So, defensively, Olivia, the Packers should stop this. But so if they do, I think it's because of that, not because they fixed anything.
Let's flip it over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube for some of your questions. Thank you all so much for joining us. It is lovely to see all of you. We'll start with Smumster over on Periscope. Question, will running back Aaron Jones and left tackle David Bakhtiari play tomorrow? I know they are questionable to play. This is correct. Both Bakhtiari dealing with the chest injury and Jones, who's dealing with a calf injury, are both questionable for tomorrow's game. The Packers played it pretty safe last week. They've been playing it safe with these injuries. Bakhtiari and Jones did not play this past weekend against the Vikings. How likely is it that they're healthy and ready to go on Thursday?
This is really interesting. Because I'm curious to see what a player's status in the locker room means, and I don't, or status in the league. I'm trying to find a way to phrase this and not disrespect Billy Turner, because he is a big locker room leader. And where I'm going with this, Olivia, is I could see Aaron Jones being active, especially because they only have Dexter Williams, But I could also see them having no intention of playing Aaron Jones. Just like David Bakhtiari was active against Detroit, and they had no intention of playing him. But they kind of needed him to be active and be dressed, just in case. So, do you dress Aaron Jones and David Bakhtiari, Olivia, with no intention of playing them? And just saying, hey, we only need you if it really goes bad. Can you do that with those type of players? I don't know. And maybe Jones is going to be healthy enough to go. But to me, Olivia, and you can weigh in on this too, I thought what Matt LaFleur said about them, it indicated they didn't feel they were quite ready to go yet. So that's kind of where I'm at. I do feel like questionable really is 50-50 at this point, right?
To your point, Jim, didn't the Packers do almost what you're describing with right tackle / left tackle Billy Turner week 2 when he wasn't really ready to go? However, he was active on the sideline in case of an emergency situation to be put in. They've done it before. It's possible they would do it with Jones or Bakhtiari.
Yeah, so Smumster, that's a great question. I do think it's just going to be up to really that 90-minute window when it's active or not. And even then, they may still wait to see how it goes if those guys are active.
It is a good question. Thank you so much for participating as always. Let's go over to Facebook. Ron has a question for us. Ron does not understand why the game isn't being postponed to Sunday or later, with both Bourne on the 49ers testing positive for COVID-19 and running back A.J. Dillon testing positive for COVID-19 following Sunday night's game against the Vikings. Plus, the Packers have ruled out inside linebacker Kamal Martin and running back Jamal Williams, who are both considered high-risk close contacts to A.J. Dillon. So, Ron wants to know, why isn't the game being postponed to Sunday or later? Jim, why isn't the game being postponed to Sunday or later as the league and the 49ers still work through who is considered a high-risk close contact?
Yeah, so we talked to Dr. Alan Sills, NFL Chief Medical Officer, on Tuesday, and regarding the Packers and one positive test, 2 close contacts. Dr. Sills basically said, look, that's not enough to postpone a game. He flat out said, he's like, look, we have this specific kind of situation on a week-to-week basis with one positive test, a couple of close contacts, and if they feel they've got a handle on that, like that is what it is. And I think you have to look toward that Las Vegas Raiders situation a couple weeks ago, where one offensive lineman was positive. They quarantined the whole rest of that group for the whole week. Raiders didn't practice with their starting offensive line. They had to play anyway. And guess what? They lost by 20. I think the league just kind of shrugs their shoulders at that, Ron, to be honest. And then clearly, whatever happened in San Francisco today, I think they're feeling the same way. It's one positive test. If it's a couple close contacts, they really don't care. That's not enough to push anything. In this specific instance, Olivia, it's really interesting to me because they could move the game, and it wouldn't affect any other teams. It wouldn't affect any other schedules. They could move it to Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night. It's really a one-game thing. So I think really the league is just, you know what, this is the cost of doing business in 2020. They want to keep their schedule going, and that's just kind of where it's at. And look, if the 49ers suddenly, Olivia, wake up tomorrow with 9 more positive tests, I guess the league is just going to say, well, Packers, I guess you got to stick in this hotel room for however long.
That was going to be my follow-up. How many high-risk close contacts is the threshold to a cancellation or a postponement?
That's a great question. Again, I think it's totally case by case. We mentioned the Raiders. There was their entire offensive line. They figured, whatever, that's fine. The Giants had the same kind of deal, where I think their whole offensive line for a day or two. Now, granted, they have now since changed some of those rules, so I don't know. I mean, the 49ers don't have that many guys that are healthy to begin with. So I don't know what that threshold is, because at some point, would the 49ers even have 48 players available to play? That's probably the threshold, Olivia. I would say that's probably the threshold, is if they have 48 guys. And then they hope that that's what they're going to wake up with tomorrow morning.
Thanks so much, Ron, for your question. Let's take a question here from Brian. Brian wants to know, is defensive backs coach Jerry Gray a Matt LaFleur hire, a general manager Brian Gutekunst hire, a CEO/president Mark Murphy hire? What are the odds that he is the defensive coordinator in 12 days? I know we've seen a lot of mounting upset feelings toward defensive coordinator Mike Pettin over the last several weeks, especially this past weekend after the Packers defense truly broke down in the run game. How likely is it that Mike Pettin's job is on the hot seat?
Yeah, well, to answer Brian, let's start off. I mean, he's a Matt LaFleur hire. He hires the coaches. So that's that. And they don't have a previous history, if that's kind of where you're getting at. I mean, they never coached together anywhere. They did not overlap in Washington. So, whatever was going on. I mean, look, Jerry Garrett is probably the best, most experienced secondary coach available at the time. And now you're right. He's the only one on the staff who has called plays defensively. I find it hard to believe Mike Pettin would get fired Friday morning. Look, if it's really bad and they run, and this 49ers team runs for 200 yards and they lose because they couldn't stop, some fourth string running back no one's ever heard of, this would be the only chance Matt LaFleur would have to make that move. You have the mini bye. You'd have Jerry Gray getting 4 days to kind of reset everything and do whatever internal meetings before you went back to work. I can see that train of thought. Wow, Olivia, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, that feels like that it wouldn't happen, but I guess you have to put it out there that you wouldn't be surprised if it did, because it would have to go that badly, right? It would have to be that of a terrible performance in order for Matt LaFleur to really feel that way.
How likely is it that they would make a mid-season firing?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know. He's only been a head coach once. To me, in his second year, 7 games in, when even with a loss, you'd be tied for first in the division. You still have everything in front of you. I find that hard to believe. I do. I don't think that would happen. But, stranger things have happened, that's for sure.
Thank you so much, Brian, for your question. Let's take a question here from Levi over on Facebook. Levi asks, if Dexter Williams and Tyler Ervin are the running backs, will a quick-hitting short passing game be the Packers' equivalent of a running game? How confident is head coach Matt LaFleur in Dexter Williams more so than Tyler Ervin, seeing as Tyler Ervin is pretty much a wide receiver? How confident is LaFleur in Williams that he can be a true running back?
Yeah, I think there's 2 elements there, Levi. It's handoffs and then the pass protection type of thing, like that little shovel pass, which is kind of like a run on the jet sweep, but it's going to count as a pass. You're right. I could see Tyler Ervin touching the ball more in that scenario. I think, Olivia, didn't he carry it 3 times, 46 yards against Minnesota way back in week 1? I can see that. I think Dexter Williams can handle a straight handoff. Look, the best he ever looked last year was in the exhibition season in practice when they just gave it to him as a running back. 1 cut and go. I think he can do that. It's just the pass protection, the blitz pickups, making the right decisions in blitz pickups. That's probably where they're going to be a little nervous about. I mean, look, he missed that block in Houston in the one-on-one punt situation. I mean, and that's far less complicated of a read and a block than maybe some exotic blitz type of situation. So, yeah, Levi, I can see a couple of handoffs to Dexter Williams, and a couple meaning maybe 10, 11. But, yeah, Tyler Ervin and Devontae Adams and Marquez Valdez-Scantling coming across. I can definitely see that part of the Packers' motion game, passes technically being part of the run game.
Thank you, Levi, for joining in on our discussion as always. Let's go over to Bryson on Facebook. Bryson says, obviously, with Brian Gutekunst not getting any defensive line help this offseason, I'm sure he expected more improvement from players like Dean Lowry and Tyler Lancaster. Was it a mistake to have faith in them? Let's lump in not just Lancaster and Lowry into this conversation, but how about Kiki Kingsley and Montravius Adams? Kingsley, a 2019 draft pick, Montravius Adams, a 2017 draft pick. How high were Gutekunst's expectations for especially those 2 players to make a jump in 2020?
Okay, Bryson, a couple of things. One, you're right. With no additions to the defense, Brian Gutekunst felt the offseason, the free agency acquisitions from 2 years ago, all of the other draft picks were to ascend. What Lancaster, I think, is a different situation. He's asked to be a run filler, a placeholder. And according to Mike Pettin and Jerry Montgomery, when he has played, he is graded out either at 100 or near 100 with what he is asked to do. So I think the issue, Bryson, maybe Dean Lowry. Look, when he got that extension a couple years ago, Brian Gutekunst called him the pillar along with Kenny Clark. So I think it's fair to wonder if Dean Lowry has ascended the way the team felt he was going to. And I don't necessarily think that's in pass rush. I think it is with those first down, holding where he's supposed to be, or making tackles for loss in the run game. Kingsley Kiki, I think, is flashing a little bit in year 2. You see him, obviously, the 2 sacks against Drew Brees are the good. Running past Dalvin Cook last week in the run game is the bad. So I think he's kind of in that developmental mix. I'm going to put it on Dean Lowry a little bit. And Montravius Adams, Olivia, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's in year 4. That guy, he's been the same guy for 4 years. Last year, I think they thought he was going to make the jump. Remember, preseason, we all wrote, Mike Pettin said he's the most improved player. And then he didn't play at all because he didn't. So did they expect a jump out of him? I don't know. I think he's been him, So I'm going to put it on Lowry a little bit because he got the money, and they thought more was going to come from that position and that guy. So I think this back end of the season, Bryson, they're going to hope and expect, frankly, Dean Lowry to play a little better.
Thank you, Bryson, for your question. That is going to do it for us today, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been lovely chatting with you all as always. We will be live before and after the game tomorrow, so make sure you come back to Packers News over on Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube to join in with us once again. For Jim Owczarski, I'm Olivia Reiner. We'll see you next time.